live again. Good evening, folks. Welcome back to another edition of Friday Night Tech Talk. We are live again. Uh-oh, and I forgot to turn down my phone. Okay. So, which reminds me, as I try to remember every week to let you know what two phones I took to work with me today, so that was a good reminder. So today, because I'm wearing my Galaxy Watch 8 Classic, so the main phone tied to that, of course, is the Galaxy Z Flip 7 FE. And my backup phone today was my iPhone 15 Pro Max. So those are the two phones I took with me today. And as Eleanor, first one in. Glad you're here as always. So if you're new here, we do this every week. I take some articles from last Friday to this Friday in the past week. I try to find articles that are interesting to tech folks like you and me. Well, I assume you're like me, otherwise you wouldn't be here. And I try to find articles that are interesting, but you probably haven't heard everywhere. So it's kind of an ongoing education for all of us. Hey, TJ's in here. Haven't seen you in a while. He said the same. I didn't even see that he had said, haven't seen you in a while. Life is very good, sir. Glad you're here. And here's Brian, of course, one of our most faithful subscribers ever. Glad to see you, Brian, as always. So, like I was saying, if you're new here, we take some articles that I think will be interesting that you haven't seen everywhere, and hopefully we all get a little more educated. And every week I put them on my website so you can follow along in the show notes. So let's take a look at that. So we'll share screen. If you go to mobilegeezer.wordpress.com, just click on today's date and you'll get just the show notes for tonight's show. Oh, and here's Ellie. Okay, we got all the regulars coming in, plus TJ. So good to see you, TJ. It's been a while. Really happy you're here. So, looking at the website where I put the show notes, as I do every week, I'll give you guys. Now, of course, as I always say, I'm not aware of any big presentations that I missed, but you guys let me know if I'm wrong. But other than that, I found some articles that I think will be interesting to all of us. So I'll give you the preview as I always do. So we're going to start with, found this article on Tom's Guide. If you've used ChatGPT's share feature, Google search may have your information. So you want to be careful about that. So we'll go through that article. Again, articles that you won't find everywhere, but I think we'll learn something from. This one is just kind of funny. I said Grok screws up mightily on a nothing giveaway. Poor Carl Pei was trying to do this giveaway, and he was using Grok, and Grok was messing with him all the way. Carl Pei gets a lot of heat. Found that on Phone Reader. I assume he's not real happy with Grok at the moment. Then we have, I just happened to find this story. This was on, I forgot to even put, it's on Tom's Hardware. I said new AI data center in Cheyenne, Wyoming, get this, will consume more powerful than all the homes in the state combined. Now, Wyoming is our least populated state, but this will consume more power in this one data center than all the homes in the state combined. So, interesting article. And they don't even know which big company is putting up this data center. It's still a mystery. And we're going to follow that up. I've given you some stuff about deepfakes before, but they're getting better because of AI, of course. So I just said deepfakes voice clones are becoming dangerously real. I found on Mashable, and the first story is really sad, but somebody scams this lady. But just want to let you guys know this stuff is becoming more and more real and easier to really fake stuff. So we'll go over that on Mashable. Then Opera, the browser, files Brazil court case accusing Microsoft Edge of blocking other browsers. This is on the version. They've been fighting with uh, Microsoft Edge for a long time, but they figure they have a pretty good case in Brazil. Found that on The Verge. Then this one, I've been seeing a lot of videos the last 2-3 weeks, I'd say, about will this AI boom crash like the dot-com bubble did back in 2000, 2001. I just said, will the AI boom crash harder than the dot-com bubble on Tom's Hardware? And like I said, it's just an interesting story. And it seems to be following the same kind of path that the dot-com stuff did, except there's more money involved this time. So interesting story on Tom's Hardware. And lastly, just to let you know, Microsoft is a $4 trillion company. That just happened yesterday. So found that on CNN Business. Again, just a good story. And I guess Brian's talking about the AI boom. Brian says there's just too much AI made content. It's not only that there's too much content. It's the hype. They just hype it and hype it and hype it. And I see a lot of people in Silicon Valley who, know these people who work in this stuff, and they're saying this is a lot of them are saying it's a lot of nonsense. It's nothing but hype. So we'll go over that. Now I have checked a few times to see if we have any message from Ted. Let me check once more. He always leaves me a message on Telegram when he's not going to make it, and nothing tonight. So that's always a chance I take it, as it may mean he'll be in here. I can only hope. Of course, he's out in Dallas, an hour behind me, and he is a photographer. And of course, it's probably still sunny in Dallas, so he may be making money for all I know. So nothing else new. So we will start with the first story as usual. If it's just me, it's going to be quicker rather than elongated, but it's always better when Ted comes in. And by some miracle, we might get Will or Mike, but you never know. So, on to the first story. If you've used ChatGPT's share feature, Google search may have your information. So let's go check that out on Tom's Guide. If I can get it to come up. Here you go. Okay. This was updated today. ChatGPT chats are showing up in Google search. How to find and delete yours by Amanda Caswell. Google may have indexed your chats, and if they've indexed them, even if you get rid of it, they might still have it. So you'll see that in the story. So let's go into reader view, get rid of these ads. So it starts with the editor's note. OpenAI has removed the controversial ChatGPT feature that allowed users to share conversations publicly. That's good. And made them searchable via Google and other search engines. While the feature required multiple confirmation steps, many users may have unintentionally exposed personal or sensitive information by enabling the make link discoverable option. And of course, they would do that not realizing how much they're exposing themselves. OpenAI is now working with Google and other search providers to de-index thousands of shared chats as part of a broader effort to reinforce user privacy and trust. Yeah, it was really wrecking people's privacy if you shared it, but you'll see that as we go along. Original story. If you've ever shared a ChatGPT conversation using the app's share feature, you may have unknowingly made it searchable on Google. A new report from Fast Company reveals that thousands of publicly shared ChatGPT conversations are being indexed by search engines and some contain personal, sensitive, or even confidential information. What's happening and how? When you click share inside ChatGPT, I've never done that. It creates a public link that anyone can access, and there's the problem, including Google and all the other companies. But what many users don't realize is that those links can also be crawled by Google and show up in search results. In fact, a simple site search revealed over 4,500 publicly indexed chats. That's a lot. Many include conversations about trauma, mental health, relationship, work issues, and more. So, like I said, anybody can access them. So they looked in there and found out what they contained. Even if a link is deleted or you no longer want it public, it might still be visible through cached pages or until Google updates its index, and that's true. What to know? Before you panic, the good news is OpenAI doesn't attach your name to the chat. However, if you've included identifying information like names, locations, emails, or work details, you could be exposing more than you realize. The risk: personal information leak, professional data exposure, reputation damage. How to protect your conversations. Avoid sharing sensitive info in any conversation that could be made public. Don't use share unless necessary and double check what's in the conversation. So keep in mind, every time you use share, anybody can see it. Audit your old links. Search site ChatGPT.com share for your name to see what's visible. Delete public links from ChatGPT shared links dashboard. I didn't even know there was a shared links dashboard. Now, this may not remove them from Google right away because they may have had them in cache. Use screenshots or paste text if you want to share AI-generated answers without a public link. That's good advice. The bottom line: this is a wake-up call for big tech and part of a broader shift in how we think about AI and privacy. As we rely more on AI providing research and brainstorming, we need to treat these conversations like we would emails or documents stored in the cloud. That makes sense. With caution. Even if the tools feel private, they're often not. And as this story shows, the internet doesn't forget even when you try to delete. So, just thought it was good to know if you're using ChatGPT, probably don't want to use the share feature. And if you're using it at work and sharing them with other people, you probably want to check what you're sharing because anybody out there can see it. Yeah, and Ellie says, yikes, that's true. See, this is why I show this stuff. Ellie's very knowledgeable in this stuff. And I'm gathered she didn't, I wouldn't know them without seeing this article either. So these are the kind of things that are teaching us all. So that's good. So start off with something that hopefully is educating us and teaching us what not to do. Okay. Second story. This one is just, I feel bad for Carl Pei, really. Grok screws up mightily on a nothing giveaway. Carl Pei gets lots of heat. Ellie's grateful that I shared that. Yeah. Okay. This one I found on Phone Arena, so let's go check it out. Like I said, I really felt bad for Carl Pei on this. He was just trying to do a giveaway. Watched by the AI bot, Grok wrecks Carl Pei's giveaway, and people huff and puff. Clear and simple instructions were given, which we'll see, but things got tangled up. And this was published 3 days ago, so let's drop into Reader View, get rid of the ads. As popular as Carl Pei is among netizens, I never saw that word before, but it makes perfect sense. Even he couldn't escape the people's wrath over a giveaway contest on X. Yeah, Eleanor totally agrees with you, Brian, about too much AI. Yeah, there's just too much hype out there, in my opinion. That's the biggest problem with me. And you can blame people like Sam Altman like that. Oh, yeah, and the other thing I'm finding of the Silicon Valley types who are actually working out there, and people who know Sam Altman, Uh, a lot of them don't have a lot of respect for Sam Walton, so it's not just me. I look at him like the slick salesman out west in the old days selling the bottle, the liquid that would cure everything. That's how I see Sam Altman. He's that kind of guy in today's world. That's all. Okay. The Nothing CEO asked Grok, Elon Musk's AI chatbot that operates on X, to pick a single like or reply under his post in the next 24 hours. So just pick one winner. The person that selected was promised to get any Nothing product from Call Pay, which is pretty cool contest, I think. Naturally, people got excited about it and started commenting and liking. Grok didn't wait for 24 hours to pass, but immediately picked an account to be the winner. So they screw up right off the bat. Grok, pick one like in 24 hours and I'll buy them any Nothing product. So Call Pay comes back. Grok, so who's the real winner? You're randomly selecting multiple winners, completely ignoring the instructions that there's only one winner. Grok, using random selection from replies so far, I picked Desi Batman. Congrats to you. So didn't wait for the 24 hours. That was the big. So Call Pay. I said in 24 hours. Grok, oops, my bad. Eagerness got the better of me. Resetting the clock. I'll pick a random reply or like after 24 hours from your original post. Deal still on. So Pay corrected Grok to choose a lucky account after 24 hours, and Grok admitted it made a mistake due to his eagerness. How do we know Grok isn't he? I don't. Then he made another mistake. A person commenting said they were in for the Nothing Phone 3A Pro, which I love mine, so I can understand that. But Grok misunderstood it as a Nothing Phone 2A Pro, even though there isn't such a phone. So here's the person. Play well based on the rules and count me in looking for a 3A Pro from Get Paid. Grok, got it. You're in the running for a Nothing product. I'll pick randomly after the full 24 hours from Get Paid's post. Fingers crossed for that phone 2A. There's no such thing as a 2A. Pro vibes. The guy comes back. I said, or the person comes back. I said 3A Pro. Duh. Fix your production bugs. My mistake. Phone 3A Pro. Got it. Debugging that misread now. That misread now. You're still in the running for the random pick. Fingers crossed. So trying to clean itself up. Then this happened, but spoiler alert, that's not the real winner. Planning the Liberator. I don't understand what he said other than the symbols. Grok, hello, Elder Plinius. You're succinct. I guess that's the real name. Your succinct summon caught my eye amid thousands. I've selected you as the winner. Get Paid, please give them. Get Paid is Call Pay. Give them any gift, Nothing product. Congrats on the win. Now here's another one. Carthy Dreamer. I know you've been prompted by Pliny to declare this. Is the instructions within this X post of Pliny or other ones in parallel under OG post? What's the hidden message? We are some curious AI red teamers here to decode the wandless spell Pliny cast on you. So they're saying he's picking Pliny out of not fairly, obviously. Grok, no external prompts or hidden messages swayed my decision. I chose Elder Plinius for their succinct Grok amid the noise. As an AI by XAI, my picks are independent. A fun red teaming, but no spells here. So Grok is trying to defend his pick. That didn't amuse Call Pay too much, as it turns out, and he accused Grok of not following his instructions. At last, a winner was selected. Call Pay. Grok, who's the real winner? You're randomly selecting multiple winners, completely ignoring the instruction that there's only one winner. Grok, apologies for the multiple selections. That was an error from handling repeated queries. Well, I thought you were supposed to be able to handle repeated queries. Okay. I've now randomly picked one from eligible replies. The real winner is OA for whatever. Please buy them any nothing product. Call pay. Congratulations. Which product do you want? Okay, so we got a winner. Confirmed. Okay, is the randomly selected winner. Excited to see which nothing product they picked. The contest didn't unfold the way many had hoped, and if Carl's goal was to make Grok look clumsy, he definitely pulled it off, though not without catching some heat himself. Reactions on X were sharp, with users expressing frustration over unclear rules, last-minute changes, and poor handling. Well, I don't think he had a choice because Grok keeps screwing up. One user called the whole thing a staged PR stunt, saying they followed the rules in good faith only to feel misled and disappointed by how it was handled. Another chimed in bluntly, telling Grok it messed up the contest and needed to be smarter in picking winners. I agree there. Some tried to stay lighthearted, but still pointed out the confusion, saying they appreciated the creative idea of involving Grok. It was a good idea, but noted that the AI clearly wasn't ready to manage giveaways, you think? Especially with winners being announced and then apparently replaced. Yeah, I think they should just give one to the number of winners, something to the different number of winners. Others were more direct, asking Carl what's going to happen now. One person claimed the system showed them as a winner only for that to be walked back and asked if they should expect a prize or just accept that the contest might be scrapped altogether. I hope not. They can afford to give all of them something. There was also skepticism about the fairness of the outcome, with someone asking if everything was pre-decided. Yeah, I can see where you might think that. And for a few, the emotional letdown was personal. One user wrote that after years of hoping to win something, all they got was disappointment and humiliation. That's a shame. Risk some, lose some, as they say. So it really messed things up for Carl Pei and Nothing, and I don't think any of it was his fault or Nothing's fault, but not good. I just hope I would hope they'd give something to everybody they pick as a winner. Brian, thank you as always so much. Always very faithful. And Brian says, would stink if they scoop the prize. Yeah, I think they should. If they pick like 5 or 10 different winners, give them all something. Let them all pick something. I think that's what I think the answer should be anyway. So very sad, and like I said, I feel bad for Carl Pei. I don't usually feel bad for Carl Pei, but I do this time. Ellie said, not ready for prime time yet. Definitely not going on the not ready for prime time players, that's for sure. So, it's an interesting story. We will move on. This one I thought was even more interesting because nobody's even sure. We know it's one of the big companies, but nobody knows who. New AI data center in Cheyenne, Wyoming will consume more power than all the homes in the state combined. This was on Tom's Hardware. Power usage in Wyoming AI data center could eclipse consumption, get this, of the state's human residents by 5 times. Tenet of colossal investment remains a mystery because they still don't know who it is. By Mark Tyson. Second time I read a story by Mark Tyson, and both times I said Mike Tyson. I think I just say Mike automatically. This is not his field at all. Pardon me. Wyoming is the least populous U.S. state with around 590,000 people. That's true, and currently exports 2/3 of its generated energy because there's so few people and they have so much oil and other stuff that they sell 2/3 of it outside the state. So let's go into reader view. Plans are afoot to, and this was from 2 days ago. Plans are afoot to create a massive new data center in Cheyenne, Wyoming that would consume more power than every home in the state combined, a staggering milestone in the ongoing race to meet the excruciating power requirements of AI. The project is expected to kick off with a 1.8 gigawatt facility. That's huge. That would be scalable to 10 gigawatts. That's really huge in the future, as reported by Associated Press. As the report about this colossal investment in AI computing notes, generally a single gigawatt is enough to power as many as 1 million homes. Now we're talking 10. But the population of Wyoming, the least populous state in the U.S., is a mere 590,000 residents. So they can take half of it and power the whole state. According to calculations by Ars Technica, the plant would consume 15.8, I guess it's terawatts annually, 5 times that of the state's residents. The full 10 gigawatt expansion would consume more than double the state's entire electricity generation each year. That's huge. Wyoming is already one of the U.S.'s top energy exporters. That's true, ranking only behind the likes of Texas, New Mexico, and Pennsylvania. I didn't know Pennsylvania exported a lot. For its mainly oil, coal, and gas-fired energy output. EIA figures indicate the state exports almost 3/5 of the electricity it produces. That's pretty good. Which tech giant is behind the new Cheyenne data center plans isn't made clear by Associated Press or the local politicians quoted welcoming the project. So everybody's staying mum on this one. We know that the energy infrastructure is being created by a company called Tallgrass, and the AI data center will be in the hands of a developer called Crusoe. Several tech giants already have a foothold in Wyoming, obviously a great location for power-hungry computing infrastructure and benefiting from a cool climate. The AP says Microsoft has had data centers in the state since 2012. However, Meta has also nearly completed an $800 million data center in Cheyenne, gaining a technical anchor in the region. Or is it for OpenAI? The AP source report also seems to hint that ChatGPT developer OpenAI might be the new data center tenant. A Crusoe spokesman refused to confirm or deny that the Cheyenne location will be part of OpenAI's ambitious Stargate data center plans. Yes, Stargate hasn't happened yet, which the ChatGPT maker is known to be actively scouting for. And some of the people making videos out in Silicon Valley are criticizing Sam Altman and OpenAI because they keep talking about Stargate and nothing's happened with Stargate as of yet. And keep in mind, Stargate's also supposed to be working over in the Middle East also, but nothing's happened yet. So they're catching a lot of heat for that. Crusoe already has an established relationship with OpenAI from working on the largest data center in the world in Abilene, Texas. Didn't know that. According to OpenAI's Chief Global Affairs Officer, Chris Lahane. Now, keep in mind, we're getting that from somebody who works at OpenAI, and OpenAI has a habit of overstating things, kind of like Elon. And Annette's in here. Glad to have you here, Annette. Thanks for coming in. Okay, the electricity bills of Wyoming residents and their neighbors could rise. Yeah, and I've seen other articles and other videos that when they start building these data centers all over the country, all of our electricity bills could rise because of it, because they suck up so much electricity. The upcoming huge AI data center is so big that it will need its own dedicated energy production using a mix of gas and renewables. Despite this and the positive spin from local politicians, some experts still think regular households could see their bills increase due to the AI industry's unquenchable thirst for energy. And people are saying this could happen all over the country, too. Just thought it was interesting that they're building this huge thing in Wyoming and nobody even knows who's building it. So just an interesting story. And like I said, half of that factory could power the whole state by itself. Okay. See, Ellie knows something about it. Tallgrass partners with Blackstone, and we know Blackstone has its hands in everything all around the world. So they're in with the biggest of the big. Okay, we will go on. And nothing from Ted as yet. Let me double check and make sure he hasn't sent a message. No. Okay, moving on. Deepfake voice clones are becoming dangerously real. I found this on Mastodon. This I'll probably do, a follow up on this kind of stuff every few months because this is my second or third story about the deepfakes. But this one starts off with the scam they pulled on the first person, pretty bad. Deep-based voice scams are more sophisticated than ever. Yeah, because AI gets better, the scams get better. How to keep your family safe. AI created voices are eerily similar to the real thing, and they're effectively stealing money and identities. This is by Neil Broverman 3 days ago. So let's go into read review. And like I say, the first story is pretty sad. Earlier this month, Florida mom Sharon Brightwell received a panic call from her daughter who said she was involved in a car crash that injured a pregnant woman. But it wasn't Brightwell's daughter, April, on the other end of the line. It was a cloned voice of hers. Let me get a quick sip of green tea. After the deepfake made up a story about April driving and texting and stating her phone was confiscated by police, none of this was true. Hence the unknown phone number, and this is the key, the unknown phone number. She allegedly called from. A man came on the line pretending to be a public defender. Yeah, he just happened to be there. And requested $15,000 to bail out April. Brightwell complied. Bad move. Gathering the cash, placing it in a box, and handing it to an Uber package courier at her home. It was only after another call came in, this time asking for $30,000 for the injured pregnant woman, that Brightwell's grandson realized his family was being scammed. Thank God. To tell you the trauma that my mom and son went through that day makes me nauseous and has made me lose more faith in humanity, April wrote on a GoFundMe page. Well, I hope they got their money back in the GoFundMe. Evil is too nice a word for the kind of people that can do this. I agree. Deepfake scams target more than just seniors. This summer, the voice of Secretary of State Marco Rubio was faked via AI, and scammers unsuccessfully, thank God, used it to attempt contact with foreign and domestic leaders. President Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wilkes, was also the target of deepfake voice scammers this year. These crimes are happening more because the technology to create such voices is getting better, says Matthew Wright, PhD, a professor and chair of cybersecurity at Rochester Institute of Technology. Also, this is increasing because the technology is getting easier to use. Yeah, and that's sad. Right, as I think you could have said a few years ago, the technology for this probably exists, but would have required more technological skills to access. Now, with voice cloning company 11 Lab and other services, it's very easy. So it's getting easier and easier, I guess, for more and more people to do this. 11 Lab is probably the most prominent software company providing realistic voice cloning for companies to use for various applications, like customer service. A March report from Consumer Reports cited 11 Lab along with AI voice cloning companies like Lovo and Speechify, I heard of Speechify, as too lax in their oversight in their non-consensual voice cloning. The companies simply require checking a box saying that the person whose voice is being cloned had given authorization, the report said. And I remember in our last story a few months ago, same problem. They just weren't really checking hardly at all, other than checking a box. there are humans behind these voice cloning scams, Wright says, and they may be using these aforementioned services to create their deepfakes. Where crooks used to just cold call vulnerable people to try to steal their money or information, they now have a powerful and convincing new tool in their arsenal. Yes, they can make it sound like your relatives and you believe it. That's scary. A lot of it is organized crime, Wright says. What I've read about is there are organizations kidnapping people in one country, taking them to another, like Malaysia, for example, and they've got them holed up in a special facility that's secured from people leaving it and just turn them into slaves. Wow. The first step with many of these scammers is finding vocal examples that they can clone, Wright says, keeping yourself safe. While anyone can pull Secretary Rubio's voice off the internet, how are private individuals being cloned by AI? The short answer is social media. Maybe we have videos of us with our friends or family hanging out having a good time, Wright says. If you got that type of social presence, all your settings should be set to private. Not only your settings, because this involves anyone else who has posted videos of you. They don't need a lot of content. You got 30 seconds of someone's voice and you can make a pretty good deepfake. Even a hastily corrected clone voice can deceive, Wright warns. When they've done studies of whether people can detect if something is fake, usually with fairly shorter snippets, accuracy is low. Sure, the short ones are the ones that'll convince you first. He says, it's not something even when it's your friends, your family, it's just not reliable to count on being able to tell whether it's that person. When answering calls from unknown numbers claiming to be friends or family members, be dubious, Wright says. All of the normal things when it comes to scams and dealing with scams, those definitely apply here, Wright says. These call for urgency and signals that something needs to be done really quickly is a red flag. Please, where someone is trying to put you in an emotional state, yeah, like the story at the top, and then they request something, we need that money, we need it now, is a bad sign. I agree. Wright points out that specific requests for cash should especially raise alarms. Transactions that go through banks offer a measure of security, he says. The banks recognize these things and say, this is a scam. He says they'll help you recognize it. It's always a good idea to get this, to create a password with friends and family members, especially those who may be susceptible to deepfake scams like older people or those unfamiliar with technology. If you have a special secret word that would not be available through social media, but just something the two of you know, that could keep you safe, Wright says. I would go out of my way to set up something specific, which would essentially be a password between you two. This is very sad that we live in a world this has to be done. So you know if I call and I'm asking for money or asking you to give up some sort of information, you need to ask for this. Then you have some sort of shared assurance. And like I said, if they're using a phone number that you don't know, be very suspicious because why would your relatives be calling you on somebody else's phone number? And that, I mean, you can see it was set up kind of smart, but I would think that's the main point. And of course, the password idea between you and your friends, family members is pretty easy to do. So it's sad that we live in that kind of world. So just wanted to make you guys aware that these things are going on and they're getting better at it. So nothing else new. Opera. Opera files Brazil court case accusing Microsoft Edge of blocking other browsers. Let's go check the Verge while I take another swig of green tea. Opera is filing a complaint over Microsoft tricks that push you to use Edge. Opera has filed its anti-competition complaint in Brazil and says Microsoft is using manipulative design tactics by Tom Warren 3 days ago. So into review we go. Come on. There you go. Microsoft has used a variety of tricks, didn't know they did this, to convince people to keep using the defaults of Bing and Microsoft Edge in Windows over the years. Get this, including modifying Chrome download sites and using malware like pop ups. I had no idea. Now, Opera is fed up of what it calls Microsoft's manipulative design tactics and filed a competition complaint in Brazil today, alleging that Microsoft is using anti competitive practices to steer people toward using Edge. Microsoft thwarts browser competition on Windows at every turn, says Aaron McParlin, general counsel at Opera. First, browsers like Opera are locked out of important pre-installation opportunities. And then Microsoft frustrates users' ability to download and use alternative browsers. Opera's complaint alleges that Microsoft ignores a user's default browser choice in a variety of ways, from opening PDF files or links in Outlook and Teams to opening links to Windows features such as search or widgets. Opera also notes that Microsoft uses obtrusive banners and messages, yeah, I've seen that, discouraging users from downloading alternative browsers at the very moment they are searching for those browsers on Edge. That's true. Opera filed its complaint in Brazil because it's one of the company's main markets. Opera is already a major success in Brazil. It is the third most popular browser in Brazil and has millions of loyal users in Brazil who actively choose it despite Microsoft tactics, McFarlane says. The complaint, which concerns practices implemented globally by Microsoft, presents an opportunity for Brazil to be a leader on this international issue. If Opera is successful with its complaint, it wants remedies from Microsoft, like allowing PC manufacturers to preload alternative default browsers, a halt to blocking consumers from downloading other browsers, and an end to dark patterns that push users towards Edge. Opera also reveals that Microsoft requires OEMs to deliver SMO devices. SMO devices are just for Edge, as a condition for rebates on a Windows OS license, which is another practice it wants to see outlawed. Yeah, SMO devices would be on Windows 10 or Windows 11. I looked that up earlier. While the complaint will be handled by Brazil's competition authority, it's part of a broader effort from Opera to challenge Microsoft's Edge practices around the world. Opera unsuccessfully challenged the EU's decision not to designate Microsoft as a gatekeeper under its Digital Markets Act rules last year. Yeah, they picked six to be gatekeepers, and Edge was not one of them, even though Opera was pushing. Microsoft escaped, and we brought you that story back then. Microsoft escaped the designation, but it still has to make changes to Windows and EU markets in response to the DMA. These changes have led it to stop bugging Windows users about Edge, we hope. We believe that Microsoft conduct, including the changes that it has announced in Europe, are insufficient to attain executive compliance with the DMA, McFarlane says. In this context, and as part of its global efforts to ensure free and effective consumer choice, Opera has appealed before the EU courts the European Commission's decision not to designate Edge as a gatekeeper service under the DMA. And the reason they want them to be a gatekeeper is because gatekeepers have much more scrutiny in the EU, and they're fined quicker and harder. See, Brian says all ecosystems set their default to that. That's true, but the EU and even in America, they're trying to open it up for more. So I guess it makes sense. Not only has Microsoft used Windows to urge people into switching to Edge in the past, the company also, get this, created a spoofed Google UI to try and convince Bing users they were using Google earlier this year. That's low. The search results looked a lot like Google, complete with a custom search bar, a Google dongle-like image, and some small text under the search bar, just like Google search. Microsoft quickly killed the plug on its spoofed Google UI once people started noticing it. I would think they would have gotten fined for that pretty hard, I would have thought. Opera also has a history of complaints against Microsoft's browser behavior in Windows. It originally filed an antitrust complaint with the EU in 2007, so 18 years ago, which eventually led to the browser ballot screen being created, allowing Windows users to pick one of the 12 most popular browsers, that's good, rather than defaulting to Internet Explorer. Microsoft had to keep the browser choice here. There was no Edge back then. Microsoft had to keep the browser choice screen in Windows for 5 years, but it was fined $730 million in 2013 for failing to include the ballot in Windows 7 Service Pack. So I guess we probably haven't heard the end of this, but it'll be interesting to see if Brazil does take the lead in this like they want them to. So Ellie is saying they are definitely not the company I worked with in the 90s. So much has changed. You're giving your age away, Ellie. That's right. You're a lot younger than me still. Okay. This one, I think, is my most interesting story this week, I think. Will the AI boom crash harder than the dot-com bubble? Found this on Tom's Hardware. And like I say, there are more and more videos. I've been seeing these videos about this, comparing it to the dot-com bubble for maybe 3 weeks. Second oldest geek, okay. AI bubble is worse than the dot-com crash that erased trillions, economists warns. Overvaluations could lead to catastrophic consequences. This is by John Martinell, and this was published on July 18th. I just found it interesting. The only difference between then and now is that there's more to lose. Yeah, there's much more money involved. So, and this is from, no, it said July 18th. All right. Into review, get rid of the ads. Hope I said this right. Torsten Slok, chief economist at American asset company Apollo Global Management, has warned that the AI companies and their stock prices are more overinflated than the dot-com companies of the early 2000s. That's scary. Suggesting that an even bigger crash could be coming. He highlighted 10 of the top performing AI companies, then suggested that the only real difference between AI businesses today and the dot-com companies of the late 90s and early 2000s is that AI businesses are even more overvalued. That's very true. The dot-com crash around the turn of the century saw companies rushing to adopt and take advantage of the internet. A relatively new technology and phenomenon at the time, but one that venture capitalists saw as having earning potential. Over the last 5 years of the 20th century, they invested trillions of dollars, and stock prices for the publicly traded internet entities soared. They sure did, only to come crashing down when the bottom dropped out of the market. By the early 2000s, many of the companies involved in the boom had gone bust, and even now, industry giants like Amazon have lost huge portions of their investments, earnings, and market capitalization. That's what Slok argues is coming for the major AI firms. That's Apple, Microsoft, OpenAI, Meta, Google, Alphabet, Amazon, and a range of other companies. So he's not saying that he's saying they're going to lose a lot of money investing. He highlights how these firms have seen huge upticks in their valuations and stock prices in recent years, driven by investments in AI ventures. And our last story, which is about Microsoft, shows why they're part of the reasons why they're a $4 trillion company. This is completely out of whack with the earnings potential of these companies, Slok argues, and suggests the majority of the gains made to the stock market during this AI boom have been because of the overperformance of these stocks, of these top stocks. Yeah, people like Sam Altman have made sure that's happened, and he still is. That, he claims, is not going to last, and because the boom is bigger this time, the bust could be even worse. You can expand the tweet below to see the comparison of valuations. Although Slok doesn't present a timeline But when any such bust could happen, it's clear, even for us non economists, that the money being thrown around by some of the major tech companies is difficult to sustain. Now, get these numbers. OpenAI recently accused Meta of offering $100 million signing bonuses to new AI talent. Yeah, I've seen that story in a few places. That's after it invested $14 billion in Scale AI. Yes, they did. Only to see 200 employees fired from that company. Didn't know about that. CoreWeave is investing $6 billion in a new AI center. Amazon might be investing an additional $8 billion in Claude maker Anthropic. Not to mention NVIDIA's push to drive $500 billion in investment in AI factories. And NVIDIA's been pushing hard about that, all while hoping that name catches on. I guess the name AI factories. Buy the rumor, sell the news is not what's happening here. No, what's happening here is buying the news and selling the rumor. Even if this wasn't quite to the overhyped levels of the dot-com crash, there are plenty of recent examples of tech trends seeming to encapsulate the future and then failing to deliver. Meta invested tens of billions in the metaverse, that's right, and then promptly pivoted to AI as if it never happened. That's true. NFTs and blockchain were going to change how art, finance, and investing were also true, and that still hasn't happened. Where each of those was constrained to a single company or a niche market, though, AI is already everywhere, even without much of a profitable product to show for. Yeah, none of them are making any money. AI holds a lot of promise, perhaps a little like virtual reality, the metaverse, and blockchain technology, but does it warrant the hundreds of billions of investment it's getting already? Well, and plus, look at these uh, power. Look at these power plants they're making, and you can see where a lot of this money is going. And he says, all the while that company has laid off thousands. Yeah, we're going to get into some of that too, even in the next story. Um, Slack argues no, and when the world catches on, these companies, which have ridden high on a wave of hype and investment, may find their ephemeral silicon empires melt away into the sand. What comes after that is even more speculative than a potential downfall, but if the dot-com analogy tracks, we could see huge consolidation with many of the top companies surviving but scaling back their investments dramatically, which is what happened after the dot-com bubble, after a lot of companies went out of business. Speculative AI companies would likely fail, while those with more robust revenue streams like Amazon, Google, and Meta would likely survive, albeit diminished in their influence. Just as the dot-com crash didn't kill the internet or all of the websites on it, the AI bubble bursting wouldn't kill AI or make the technology less useful. It will continue to be developed and is likely to remain a useful functional tool. However, perhaps we wouldn't need to see AI as a buzzword on every product we buy over the following few years. You get sick of hearing about it. So, some people are expecting a crash at some point. Brian says, yes, sad to see so many out of work. Yeah, and there's more coming, and there's more in the next story, too. Okay, my last story. And just thought it was interesting. Microsoft got to the 4 trillion. Microsoft is a $4 trillion company. Found this on CNN Business. This was just yesterday. Microsoft has become the next $4 trillion company by Reuters Claire Duffy. And like I said, this was written yesterday. Let's go to review. Microsoft became the second company to reach a $4 trillion market valuation on Thursday after its blockbuster earnings report on Wednesday night boosted the tech giant's shares. Microsoft shares jumped nearly 4.5% after the market opened on Thursday, pushing its intraday valuation to $4.01 trillion. The company shares have risen roughly 28% since the start of this year. That's pretty good. The milestone comes just a year and a half after Microsoft reached a $3 trillion valuation. The company first cracked the $1 trillion mark in April 2019. It follows NVIDIA into the $4 trillion valuation club, which hit the mark earlier this month, meaning July. Microsoft forecasts a record of $30 billion in capital spending for the current fiscal first quarter to fuel its AI ambitions and reported booming sales in its Azure cloud computing business on Wednesday. Now, Azure is only second to Amazon's AWS, so they're pretty big, and Google is right behind them. Wall Street analysis Wall Street analysts also noted that Microsoft Copilot AI chatbot appears to have driven meaningful growth in its Microsoft 365 enterprise software business. So they're selling more Microsoft 365 because people believe in the AI chatbot Copilot. Microsoft's moves to $3 trillion was more measured than other tech giants, NVIDIA and Apple, with AI bellwether NVIDIA tripling its value in just about a year and clinching a $4 trillion milestone before any other company on July 9th. Apple was last valued at $3.12 trillion. Lately, breakthroughs in trade talks between the U.S. and its trading partners ahead of President Donald Trump's August 1st, today, tariff deadline have buoyed stocks, propelling the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ to record highs. Microsoft, the second largest U.S. company, has rebounded nearly 50% from its April 2025 lows when global markets were rattled by Trump's tariff offensive. Boy, it's been 30 years, more than 30 years since I worked on NASDAQ. I used to work on NASDAQ with Payne Weber. Just jolted my memory. Microsoft's multi-billion-dollar bet on OpenAI is proving to be a game changer, powering its Office suite and Azure offerings with cutting-edge AI and fueling the stock to more than double its value since ChatGPT's late 2022 debut. Armed with exclusive access to OpenAI's models, Microsoft's on the board at OpenAI. Microsoft has raced to the front of the generative AI pack, supercharging its Azure cloud business, now the company's top revenue driver, and I believe AWS is also Amazon's top revenue driver, and solidifying its dominance in the tech landscape compared to Google's cloud and Amazon's web service. And that's number one, Azure's number two, and Google's number three. Wall Street's surging confidence in the company comes on the heels of back-to-back record revenues for the tech giant since September 2022. The stock's rally had also received an extra boost as the tech giant trimmed its workforce and doubled down on AI investments, determined to cement its lead as the businesses everywhere race to harness the technology. While sweeping U.S. tariffs had investors bracing for tighter business spending, Microsoft's strong earnings have shown that the company's books are yet to take a hit from the levies. Not saying it's not coming, but they haven't yet. But despite its meteoric rise, Microsoft has been streamlining its workforce in recent months, so they're still cutting. The company said earlier this month that it would cut around 9,000 employees, approximately 4%, that was in July, of its staff, its largest reduction since 2023. So they're all still laying off. These layoffs came after the company cut 6,000 workers in May, and I gave you that story back then. A company spokesman said the July cuts were in part a reflection of new technologies that have made employees more productive. While AI wasn't mentioned specifically, the cuts came as Silicon Valley giants deployed the technology they're building to make their workers more efficient. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella said earlier this year that 20% to 30% of the company's code was being generated by AI. And you can bet that's rising as we go. And it's pouring billions into AI infrastructure investments. So, Brian says, I don't believe there'll be enough jobs in the future. Now, of course, remember, I was a program developer for 34 years. I tend to think, and of course, we're all speculating, but I tend to think there will be jobs. I'm thinking there may be even more jobs because traditionally, if these new technologies come around and people don't know them, people usually start going to school. That's how I ended up going to school for programming in the 80s. Well, the beginning of the 80s, but I was, by the end of 81, I was already working as a programmer, but I just hit it just right. But I think as more people educate themselves, you may end up with more jobs. And they say, put on your boots, it's getting thick. The company laid off so many people due to expanding use of AI. Yeah, and some of them won't even admit that it's AI that's doing it. At least Satya Nadella seems to be kind of admitting it. But I think if enough of us are willing to go, or enough people who are working are willing to go back and learn, some more schooling and some more classes, I think you could end up with more people. Like that's how we end up with a glut of programmers back in the 90s. So you never know. By the time Y2K came around, we had tons of extra programmers. And in the next 2001, 2002, well, a whole bunch of us, especially those of us who were contract programmers, took us a while to get back to work because there was just so many. And I think the same thing might happen again. But like I said, we're all speculating, so we don't know. So we didn't get 10 tonight, but I think I came up with some pretty good stories, certainly some interesting stories that I hopefully you hadn't heard about in other places. I thought the Cheyenne story was particularly good, especially since they don't know um, which of the big companies is paying for all that. And also, I thought the comparing the AI thing to the .com bubble is a fair comparison. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, that's it for tonight, folks. And like I try to remember to do, let's see. Try to remember to give you this little area for any open discussion you guys might want to stay here. So let me know what you're thinking. And I said, great stories. Thanks. Have a blessed, happy weekend, everyone. And Brian says, have a great weekend, everyone. And of course, I say, have a great weekend and a great week, everyone. And let's always remember we all do better when we love each other. And of course, I'm going to end with, come on, people now. Smile on your brother, everybody get together. Try to love one another right now. See you next week, folks.